Lucas Simmons, a skilled and passionate black chef, stood at the sleek stainless steel counter, his hands expertly chopping fresh herbs. The kitchen of La Table Royale hummed with life, a symphony of sizzling pans and bustling cooks filling the space. Despite the activity around him, Lucas was entirely in his element, deeply immersed in his craft. The tantalizing aromas of simmering sauces and roasting meats wafted through the air, bringing a satisfied smile to his face. Cooking wasn't just his job, it was his sanctuary. "Chef Lucas," called Emily, a bright-eyed line cook with a knack for learning quickly. "The special tonight is absolutely incredible. You've outdone yourself as always." Lucas looked up, his kind brown eyes lighting up as a smile spread across his face. "Thanks, Emily, but remember, it's a team effort. We're all part of the magic." His voice was warm, encouraging, and full of pride in his team. As he spoke, his mind wandered to his ultimate dream, owning his own restaurant. He pictured a cozy dining space filled with laughter, where guests savored dishes crafted straight from his heart. The thought filled him with hope and determination, his chest swelling with ambition. Just then, the swinging kitchen door opened, revealing Mrs. Armand, one of their most loyal patrons. Her face brightened the moment she spotted Lucas. "There he is, the maestro of flavors," she exclaimed. "Lucas, your lobster bisque was heavenly. I had to come back and tell you in person." Lucas felt his cheeks grow warm under the praise. "Thank you, Mrs. Armand. I'm so glad you enjoyed it." Her kind words resonated with him deeply. Moments like these reminded him why he loved cooking, the joy it brought to people, and how it connected to their hearts through taste. After she left, Lucas turned back to his prep station, his mind bubbling with fresh ideas for new dishes. As he picked up a ripe tomato and felt its weight in his hand, he silently vowed, "One day I'll serve creations like this in my own place." The dream felt almost within reach, as real and vibrant as the ingredients in his hands. However, the energy in the kitchen took a sharp turn with the arrival of Mr. Walter Gaines, the new head chef and part owner. His polished shoes echoed against the tiled floor, and his pristine white coat stood in stark contrast to his icy demeanor. Lucas stood tall, his heart pounding with both excitement and apprehension. He had prepared his signature dish, hoping to make a positive impression on the new boss. "Mr. Gaines," Lucas began, extending a hand. "I'm Lucas Simmons. It's a pleasure to meet you." Mr. Gaines's sharp gaze swept over Lucas, pausing momentarily on his dark skin before settling on the plate before him. He ignored Lucas's handshake. "What is this?" Mr. Gaines asked, his tone clipped and disinterested. Lucas swallowed hard, maintaining his polite smile. "It's my signature dish, sir, a blend of traditional French techniques with Caribbean flavors. I thought you might enjoy trying it." Mr. Gaines's lips curled slightly, a faint sneer appearing. "I see. Well, Mr. Simmons, La Table Royale is renowned for its classic French cuisine. We don't do experimental here." The words hit Lucas like a punch to the stomach. He watched as Mr. Gaines turned away without tasting the dish, addressing the staff about his plans for the restaurant. Lucas stood frozen, his carefully crafted plate untouched and growing cold. The excitement he had felt moments earlier dissolved into a hollow ache in his chest. As Mr. Gaines outlined his vision for upholding tradition and excellence, Lucas disposed of his dish quietly. He tried to focus on the speech, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the cold, dismissive look in Mr. Gaines's eyes. For the first time since starting at La Table Royale, Lucas felt like an outsider in the kitchen he had poured his soul into. Over the following days, subtle but unsettling changes swept through the restaurant. Lucas noticed shifts in his schedule, often finding himself relegated to quieter lunch shifts instead of the lively dinner service he loved. One afternoon, while preparing for a busy lunch, he overheard Mr. Gaines speaking to another chef. "We need to stick to traditional flavors," Mr. Gaines said firmly. "No more of this fusion nonsense." Lucas's heart sank. He kept his head down, determined to push through. But a nagging sense of unease crept in. Lucas Simmons tried his best to contribute during the weekly menu planning sessions, but Mr. Walter Gaines would always cut him off or dismiss his ideas without a second glance. One evening, as Lucas and Emily cleaned up after a shift, she broke the silence. "Lucas," Emily began, concern etched on her face, "have you noticed how Mr. Gaines has been treating you?" Lucas paused, a lump forming in his throat. Forcing a smile, he replied, "I'm sure it's nothing. He's just settling in, you know?" Emily frowned, clearly unconvinced. "It doesn't seem right. You're one of our best chefs." "Thanks, Emily," Lucas said, touched by her concern. "But don't worry about me. Things will work out." But as the weeks passed, more of Lucas's colleagues expressed their worries. They saw how Mr. Gaines consistently dismissed Lucas's suggestions and excluded him from preparing the restaurant's signature dishes. Despite the growing unease gnawing at him, Lucas stayed positive, pouring his heart into his work. Whether it was a gourmet entree or a simple salad, he crafted each dish with the same care and passion. "My work will speak for itself," Lucas told himself each morning as he tied on his apron. But as he watched Mr. Gaines praise other chefs for less creative efforts, Lucas's optimism began to waver. The dinner service at La Table Royale was in full swing, the kitchen alive with the rhythmic clatter of pots and pans. Lucas was at his station, meticulously plating his signature dish, a modern twist on coq au vin. With a final flourish, he stepped back to admire his work, only to find Mr. Gaines standing behind him, his sharp gaze locked on the plate. "What is this?" Mr. Gaines demanded, his voice slicing through the hum of the kitchen. Lucas met his gaze, pride evident in his voice. "It's my take on coq au vin. The customers love it." Mr. Gaines's face twisted with disdain. "This is not coq au vin. This is an abomination." The room fell silent, every pair of eyes turned toward Lucas and Mr. Gaines. "But sir," Lucas began, his voice steady despite the hurt tightening in his chest, "I've been making this dish for years. It's one of our most popular items." "I don't care how popular it is," Mr. Gaines snapped, his voice rising. "This is a respectable French restaurant, not some trendy fusion cafe." Lucas felt his face grow hot as Mr. Gaines berated him in front of the entire staff. He noticed the pitying looks from his colleagues and the shocked expressions of the newer hires. But as Mr. Gaines's tirade dragged on, Lucas began to see beyond the harsh words. He noticed how Mr. Gaines's eyes never quite met his, and how his gestures felt exaggerated, almost performative, as if he were putting on a show. Suddenly, the realization hit Lucas like a blow to the stomach. This wasn't just about food. The dismissals, the exclusions, the public humiliation, it all pointed to something deeper. Something Lucas had hoped he wouldn't have to face in the kitchen he once considered his sanctuary. That night, Lucas returned home, his shoulders slumped and his heart heavy. The comforting aroma of his wife Sophia's homemade lasagna filled the air, but even his favorite meal couldn't lift his spirits. Sophia emerged from the kitchen, her warm smile fading as she took in the distress etched on Lucas's face. "Lucas, what's wrong?" He sank into a chair at the dining table, running a hand over his face. "It's Mr. Gaines," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Things are getting worse at the restaurant." Sophia sat beside him, her hand resting gently on his. "Tell me everything," she urged softly. With a deep sigh, Lucas recounted the evening's events, the public humiliation, the shocked faces of his colleagues, the growing tension in the kitchen. As he spoke, his voice trembled with a mix of anger and hurt. "I think," Lucas hesitated, his eyes meeting Sophia's, "I think it's because I'm black. I'm the only black chef in that kitchen, and Mr. Gaines, he treats me differently. It's like he's looking for reasons to push me out." Sophia's grip on his hand tightened, her eyes brimming with empathy and fierce protectiveness. "Oh, Lucas," she said softly, her voice full of compassion. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, but listen to me." Her voice grew stronger. "You are incredibly talented. Your food is amazing. You belong in that kitchen." Lucas nodded, drawing strength from her words. "I know, but sometimes I wonder if it's worth the fight." "It is," Sophia insisted, her tone unwavering. "You've worked too hard to let someone like him take away your passion. You've earned your place, Lucas, and no one can take that away from you." Lucas squeezed her hand, the determination in his chest rekindling. "You're right. I can't let him win." Sophia smiled, leaning in to kiss his forehead. "That's my Lucas. Now let's have dinner. You're going to need your strength to keep fighting for what's yours." As Lucas sat down to eat, the comforting warmth of Sophia's love and support began to melt away the bitterness of the day, replacing it with a quiet resolve. Sophia cupped Lucas's face in her hands, her gaze steady and full of love. "Don't let Mr. Gaines's prejudice steal your joy, Lucas," she said firmly. "You are so much more than just a chef. You're a man with a good heart, and that's worth more than any title or fancy restaurant. A small smile crept across Lucas's lips. What would I do without you? He murmured. Sophia leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his forehead. You'll never have to find out. We're in this together. Now let's eat some lasagna and figure out how we're going to show Mr. Gaines just how wrong he is. As they settled in for dinner, Lucas felt a renewed sense of determination. With Sophia by his side, he knew he could face the challenges waiting for him at La Table Royale. The tension in the kitchen thickened with each passing day. The once vibrant camaraderie at La Table Royale was now overshadowed by Mr. Gaines's oppressive presence. One morning, Lucas arrived at work to find a group of chefs huddled around Mr. Gaines, discussing the new week's menu. As Lucas approached, the conversation abruptly stopped. Mr. Gaines's cold eyes flickered over him before turning back to the group. As I was saying, Mr. Gaines continued, blatantly ignoring Lucas, we'll be debuting a new tasting menu next week. The assignments have already been made. Clearing his throat, Lucas spoke up. Excuse me, Mr. Gaines, what would you like me to prepare for the menu? Mr. Gaines's lip curled into a faint sneer. Oh, Lucas, I didn't see you there. You'll stay on your usual station. We won't be needing any of your creative input for this menu. The words stung, each syllable cutting deep. Lucas glanced around at his colleagues, searching for support, but was met with averted eyes and awkward shuffles. As the days passed, Lucas found himself increasingly sidelined. Meetings about menu changes or special events happened without him. His ideas were brushed aside and his contributions ignored. The growing distance between Lucas and his colleagues hurt most of all. Once friends, they now avoided his gaze, their conversations halting when he entered the room. One afternoon, Lucas overheard two chefs whispering in the walk-in fridge. I feel bad for Lucas, one said, but what can we do? If we speak up, we could be next on Gaines's list. I know, the other replied with a sigh. It's not right, but I can't afford to lose this job. My family depends on me. Lucas stepped away quietly, his heart heavy. He understood their fear, but the realization that he was alone in this battle weighed on him like a lead apron. The night of a high-profile event finally arrived. La Table Royale was buzzing with excitement, the dining room packed with food critics, celebrities, and influential figures. For Lucas, it was the perfect opportunity to showcase his skills, but Mr. Gaines had other plans. During the pre-service meeting, Mr. Gaines began assigning roles. Pierre, you'll handle the appetizers. Emily, main courses are yours, and Lucas. Mr. Gaines paused, a gleam of disdain in his eyes. You'll be on dish duty and prep work tonight. Dish duty. On one of the most important nights of the year, Lucas felt as if he'd been slapped. He opened his mouth to protest, but Mr. Gaines had already moved on, detailing the evening's specials, many of which Lucas had helped develop. With a heavy heart, Lucas took his place at the sink. As he scrubbed pots and pans, the tantalizing aromas of exquisite dishes, his dishes, wafted through the kitchen. Each scent felt like a cruel reminder of what he was missing. From his station, Lucas could see Mr. Gaines striding through the dining room, basking in compliments from guests. The seared scallops with truffle foam? Oh yes, a personal favorite of mine, Mr. Gaines boasted to a critic, conveniently omitting that it was Lucas who had created the dish. Despite the injustice, Lucas worked diligently. Every pot was spotless, every vegetable perfectly diced. Even in this menial role, he refused to let Mr. Gaines diminish his dignity or professionalism. By the end of the night, Lucas's frustration had grown, but so had his resolve. He might have been relegated to the background, but he knew his worth. He refused to let Mr. Gaines' actions define him or extinguish his passion for cooking. The next morning, Lucas arrived at the restaurant early. His heart was heavy, but his determination burned bright. He knew he couldn't let Mr. Gaines' unfair treatment push him out. His dream of owning his own restaurant, of creating a space where his culinary voice could shine, was still within reach. And Lucas was ready to fight for it. The following week, Lucas Simmons found himself flipping burgers and assembling simple sandwiches at Betty's Diner. The work was a far cry from the intricate dishes he used to create, but he threw himself into it with determination. Order up, Lucas called, sliding a plate of eggs and bacon across the counter. The customer, a cheerful regular named Joe, took a bite and smiled. Best eggs I've had here in years, he said, giving Lucas a thumbs up. Despite the compliment, Lucas felt a pang of longing. He missed the creativity and challenge of fine dining. During his breaks, he would pull out a small notebook, scribbling down recipe ideas, determined to keep his culinary skills sharp. One quiet afternoon, Betty caught Lucas experimenting with the diner's limited ingredients, stirring a unique sauce for the meatloaf special. "That smells amazing," she said, her eyes wide with surprise. Lucas smiled sheepishly. "Just trying something new," he said, stirring the pot with care. As the aroma filled the kitchen, Lucas felt a familiar spark ignite within him. His love for cooking hadn't disappeared. It had just been buried under layers of doubt and frustration. Later that day, as Lucas wiped down the counter, lost in thought, the bell above the door chimed. A woman in her mid-40s walked in, her eyes scanning the room. "Can I help you?" Lucas asked politely. Her face lit up. "Are you Lucas Simmons?" Surprised, Lucas nodded. "Yes, that's me. I'm Sarah from the Meadowview Community Center," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard wonderful things about your cooking." Lucas shook her hand, curiosity mingling with caution. "Thank you. What can I do for you?" Sarah smiled warmly. "We're organizing a charity cook-off next month to raise funds for our after-school programs. We'd love for you to participate." Lucas's heart skipped a beat at the mention of a cook-off, but doubt quickly crept in. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for this." "Nonsense," Sarah insisted. "Your reputation precedes you. Having you there would really help draw attention to our cause." Lucas hesitated, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Sarah replied, handing him a flyer. "We'd be honored to have you." That evening, Lucas sat at the kitchen table, staring at the flyer. Sophia noticed his distraction and sat beside him. "What's on your mind, honey?" she asked gently. Lucas sighed, explaining the invitation. "I don't know if I should do it. What if I'm not good enough anymore?" Sophia took his hand, her eyes filled with love and encouragement. "Lucas, your talent didn't disappear just because you're working at a diner. This could be a great opportunity." "But what if?" Lucas began, but Sophia cut him off. "No what-ifs," she said firmly. "You're an amazing chef. This is your chance to remind everyone, including yourself, of that fact." A small smile tugged at Lucas's lips. "You really think I should do it?" "Absolutely," Sophia affirmed. "And I'll be there, cheering you on every step of the way." The next day, Lucas's friend and former colleague Tom stopped by the diner for lunch. When Lucas mentioned the cook-off, Tom's face lit up. "Man, you've got to do it," Tom exclaimed. "Show everyone what they're missing out on." Lucas felt a flicker of excitement in his chest. The thought of creating something special and sharing his passion with others felt more appealing with each passing moment. "You know what?" Lucas said, determination blooming in his voice. "I think I will." That evening, Lucas stood in his small kitchen at home, surrounded by a colorful array of ingredients. The countertops were cluttered with spices, fresh produce, and utensils. He took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scents that always brought him comfort. As he began chopping vegetables, a spark of excitement surged through him. The rhythmic sound of the knife hitting the cutting board felt like music to his ears, and he found himself humming softly. Lucas's mind drifted to his grandmother's cooking. Rich, hearty flavors of her gumbo, and the love she poured into every meal. Inspired, he decided to create a dish that honored his roots while adding his own modern twist. Hours passed as Lucas worked, experimenting with different combinations of flavors. He tasted, adjusted, and refined, the kitchen filling with mouth-watering aromas. Sophia peeked into the kitchen, her eyes twinkling as she watched her husband engrossed in his passion. "Smells amazing in here," she said. Lucas looked up, beaming. "I think I've got something special here. Want to try it?" Sophia took a bite, her eyes widening. "Oh, Lucas," she breathed, "this is incredible." Her reaction warmed Lucas in a way he hadn't felt in months. He had missed this. The satisfaction of creating something truly delicious and sharing it with someone he loved. Over the next few days, Lucas continued to practice and refine his dish, his confidence growing with each step. The cook-off was no longer just a challenge. It was his opportunity to reignite the fire that had always fueled his love for cooking. Lucas Simmons found himself consumed with inspiration. He'd wake up early, scribbling ideas from dreams into his notebook. During shifts at the diner, he jotted flavor combinations onto napkins, eager to try them when he got home. With each passing day, his confidence grew, and the doubts that had haunted him since his dismissal from La Table Royale began to dissipate. One evening, as Lucas stood in his kitchen putting the final touches on his newest dish, a profound realization struck him. Cooking wasn't just a job, it was part of who he was. No matter the obstacles, his passion for creating would always be there, waiting to reignite. The day of the charity cook-off arrived. Lucas woke early, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. He carefully packed his ingredients and equipment, double-checking every item before heading to the bustling Meadowview Community Center. The energy inside the center was electric. Sounds of sizzling pans, rhythmic chopping, and excited chatter filled the air. Competitors of all backgrounds and skill levels set up their stations, each hoping to impress the judges and the crowd. Lucas took a deep breath and began arranging his station, his hands moving with the steady precision of a seasoned chef. As the competition began, Lucas fell into the rhythm of cooking. His movements were graceful and confident, his creativity shining in every dish. Aromas wafting from his station drew curious onlookers, who marveled at his ability to combine flavors in unexpected ways. When the judges approached, Lucas presented his dishes with pride. He shared the inspiration behind each creation, telling stories of his grandmother's cooking and his personal culinary journey. The judges listened intently, their eyes widening with every bite. "This is remarkable," one judge exclaimed, her enthusiasm unmistakable. "The flavors are so bold, yet perfectly balanced. It's like nothing I've ever tasted before." As word spread about Lucas's extraordinary dishes, more people crowded around his station, eagerly awaiting samples. They chatted excitedly about the talented chef they'd just discovered. Lucas felt a warmth spreading through his chest, a feeling of being truly seen and appreciated for the first time in months. By the end of the event, Lucas was surrounded by well-wishers and new admirers. Guests praised his creativity, asked for recipes, and inquired where they could taste more of his cooking. Gratitude and joy overwhelmed him. The doubts that had weighed him down for so long were finally lifting. As the crowd began to disperse, a well-dressed woman approached Lucas's station. Her discerning eyes scanned the remnants of his dishes, a knowing smile tugging at her lips. Lucas recognized her immediately. It was Mia Wright, one of the city's most respected food critics. "Mr. Simmons," Mia said, extending her hand. "I must say, your dishes today were extraordinary." Lucas's heart skipped a beat as he shook her hand. "Thank you, Miss Wright. I'm honored you enjoyed them." "Enjoyed is an understatement," Mia said, her eyes sparkling. "Your flavors tell a story of passion, heritage, and resilience." A lump formed in Lucas's throat. He hadn't expected such a deep understanding of his work. "I've heard about your recent challenges," Mia continued, her voice softening. "It's a shame when talent like yours is stifled by prejudice and narrow-mindedness." Lucas nodded, unable to speak. The memory of his dismissal from La Table Royale still stung, but Mia's words felt like a balm. "But today," Mia said, her tone brightening, "I saw a chef who refuses to be defined by setbacks. Your creativity and skill deserve a proper showcase." She paused, studying Lucas's face. "Have you ever considered opening your own restaurant?" Lucas's eyes widened. "It's been a dream of mine for years, but—" "But nothing," Mia interrupted gently. "I believe in your talent, Mr. Simmons, and I'd like to help make that dream a reality." Lucas felt the ground shift beneath him. You want to help me open a restaurant?" Mia nodded, her smile widening. "I have connections in the industry and a passion for supporting fresh talent. Your food, your story, they deserve to be shared with the world." Tears welled in Lucas's eyes as the weight of her offer sank in. This was more than just a chance at a new job. It was an opportunity to prove himself, to share his passion on his own terms. "Ms. Wright, I don't know what to say," Lucas stammered, overwhelmed by emotion. Mia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Say yes, Mr. Simmons. The world needs to taste what you have to offer." In that moment, Lucas knew his life was about to change. Lucas Simmons's hands trembled as he unlocked the door to his apartment, his mind whirling with every word from his conversation with Mia Wright. When he stepped inside, Sophia looked up from her book. Her eyes widened as she saw her husband's flushed face. "Lucas, what happened?" she asked, setting her book aside. Lucas took a deep breath, his voice unsteady. Sophia, you won't believe it. Mia Wright was at the cook-off. Sophia's eyebrows shot up. The Mia Wright? The food critic? What did she say? She wants to help me open my own restaurant, Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophia's jaw dropped. For a moment, the room was silent. Then she leapt from her seat and threw her arms around Lucas, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Oh, Lucas, that's incredible!" she exclaimed, her voice muffled against his chest. As they embraced, Lucas felt the weight of the past few months begin to lift. He pulled back slightly, looking into Sophia's eyes. "It's everything we've dreamed of, but it's terrifying. What if I'm not ready?" Sophia cupped his face in her hands, her eyes filled with love and determination. "Lucas Simmons, you were born ready. This is your moment." Over the next few days, Lucas and Sophia spent every spare moment planning. They sat at their small kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks filled with ideas, sketches of potential layouts, and lists of menu concepts. "What about Roots and Wings?" Sophia suggested one evening, tapping her pen against her chin. "It represents your connection to your heritage and your ability to soar to new heights." Lucas's face lit up. "That's perfect, Sophia. It's exactly what I want the restaurant to be about." As they worked, Lucas felt a renewed sense of purpose. The pain of his dismissal from La Table Royale faded, replaced by excitement for the future. With Sophia's unwavering support and Evelyn's guidance, he felt invincible. "You know," Lucas said softly one night as they got ready for bed, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm almost grateful for what happened with Mr. Gaines. If I hadn't been fired, I might never have had this opportunity." Sophia smiled, squeezing his hand. "You've always had the talent, Lucas. Now the world is finally going to see it." Mia Wright's reputation opened doors Lucas had only dreamed of. She arranged a meeting with potential investors in a sleek downtown office. Lucas stood before a group of well-dressed business people, clutching his portfolio as his hands trembled slightly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mia began, her voice confident and warm, "I'd like to introduce you to Lucas Simmons, a chef with extraordinary talent and vision." Lucas took a deep breath, his voice growing steadier with each word. He shared his journey, his passion for cooking, and his dream of opening a restaurant that honored his roots while pushing culinary boundaries. One of the investors, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, leaned forward. "Mr. Simmons, your passion is evident. Tell us more about your concept." Lucas's face lit up as he explained. "Roots and Wings is a fusion of traditional soul food and modern techniques," he said, his eyes sparkling. "I want to create dishes that remind people of home while surprising them with new flavors." The investors nodded, clearly impressed. By the end of the meeting, they had agreed to fund Lucas's dream. As they exited the office, Mia placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "You did it, Lucas. Your dream is becoming a reality." Over the following weeks, Lucas poured himself into planning. Late at night, Sophia often found him in their small kitchen, surrounded by pots and pans, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Try this," Lucas said one evening, offering Sophia a spoonful of a fragrant stew. "It's my grandmother's recipe, but I added a twist." Sophia's eyes widened as she tasted it. "Lucas, this is amazing." Lucas grinned, his chest swelling with pride. Each dish he created was a reflection of his story, a blend of his past and his hopes for the future. As Roots and Wings began to take shape, word of Lucas's comeback spread through the culinary world. His name buzzed in kitchens, cafes, and restaurants across the city. Former colleagues and patrons from La Table Royale were both surprised and delighted to hear of his return. One sunny afternoon, as Lucas was reviewing potential locations for the restaurant, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" Lucas answered, his voice curious. "Lucas," a familiar voice said hesitantly. "It's Pierre." Pierre had been one of Lucas's closest colleagues at La Table Royale. Lucas felt a rush of emotions: surprise, nostalgia, and curiosity. "Pierre, it's been a while. What's going on?" Lucas asked. There was a pause before Pierre spoke. "I heard about Roots and Wings. Lucas, I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. What you're doing is incredible." Lucas smiled, the warmth of the words sinking in. "Thanks, Pierre. That means a lot." After they hung up, Lucas stood for a moment, letting the conversation settle over him. His journey had been filled with pain and challenges, but now, standing on the cusp of his dream, he knew it had all been worth it. Roots and Wings wasn't just a restaurant. It was a testament to resilience, passion, and the power of believing in oneself. Lucas Simmons felt his chest swell with warmth as he read a text message from Nikki, a sous chef he had worked closely with at La Table Royale. "Lucas, I just heard about your new restaurant. I'm so happy for you. You deserve this chance to shine." He hadn't realized how much he missed the camaraderie of his old team until now. Throughout the day, more messages trickled in from former colleagues, line cooks, servers, and even the pastry chef who had always admired his creativity. Each note of encouragement rekindled Lucas's resolve. Later that week, while grocery shopping for ingredients to test new recipes, Lucas ran into Mr. and Mrs. Goldstein, longtime patrons of La Table Royale who had been vocal admirers of his cooking. "Lucas, my dear boy," Mrs. Goldstein exclaimed, her eyes twinkling with joy. "We've missed your wonderful dishes. Is it true you're opening your own place?" Lucas nodded, a shy smile spreading across his face. "Yes, ma'am. It's called Roots and Wings. I'm hoping to open in a few months." Mr. Goldstein clapped him on the back. "We'll be first in line, son. Your food always had heart. It'll be good to taste it again." Their words lingered with Lucas long after they parted ways. The support from former patrons and colleagues reminded him of the impact his cooking had on people, a connection that transcended recipes and rivalries. As Lucas continued fine-tuning his restaurant plans, an unexpected email arrived from Jean-Luc, the head sommelier at La Table Royale. "Lucas," it read, "I heard about Roots and Wings. I'd be honored to help curate a wine list to complement your menu. Let's talk soon." The message brought a smile to Lucas's face. Even amid past challenges, bonds of mutual respect endured, strengthening his determination to make the restaurant a success. Construction on Roots and Wings began, and Lucas found himself in the middle of a whirlwind of activity. From dawn until late at night, he oversaw every detail of the restaurant's creation. "I want the dining room to feel like home," Lucas explained to the interior designer, his eyes alight with excitement, "but also like an adventure. Can we mix warm wood tones with pops of bright color?" The designer nodded, sketching furiously as Lucas described his vision. Together, they selected rich mahogany tables and vibrant, African-inspired artwork for the walls, crafting a space that was both welcoming and inspiring. In the kitchen, Lucas was even more hands-on. Every piece of equipment, from state-of-the-art ovens to handcrafted chef's knives, was carefully chosen to meet his exacting standards. "This isn't just about cooking," Lucas told Sophia one evening as they reviewed the plans. "It's about creating an experience. Every dish that leaves this kitchen will carry a piece of my story." But bringing his dream to life wasn't without challenges. Construction delays loomed, threatening to push back the opening date, and unexpected costs began to eat into their budget. Lucas spent countless nights poring over spreadsheets, making tough decisions to keep the project on track. One particularly stressful day, a shipment of faulty kitchen tiles arrived, and Lucas felt the weight of the project bearing down on him. Doubts crept in, whispering that maybe he'd taken on more than he could handle. Just then, his phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn Wright, the food critic who had believed in him from the start. "How's it going, chef? Can't wait to see what you're cooking up." Those simple words reignited Lucas's determination. Squaring his shoulders, he dove back into the work, tackling each obstacle with renewed vigor. As the weeks passed, Roots and Wings began to take shape. The space transformed from a construction site into a warm, inviting restaurant that perfectly captured Lucas's vision. The buzz around the city's culinary scene was palpable. Food enthusiasts eagerly awaited the opening, their excitement fueled by whispers of Lucas's return. Meanwhile, across town, La Table Royale was experiencing a different kind of buzz. The once bustling restaurant now stood eerily quiet on most nights. Mr. Gaines paced the kitchen, his face etched with worry as he surveyed the half-empty dining room. "Where are all our regulars?" he muttered to the sous chef, who could only shrug in response. The absence of Lucas's innovative dishes had left a noticeable void on the menu. Patrons who had once raved about the unique fusion of flavors now complained about bland, uninspired offerings. Gaines's insistence on sticking to rigid traditional recipes failed to excite the increasingly diverse palates of the city's food lovers. But it wasn't just the food driving customers away. The once vibrant atmosphere of the restaurant had faded, replaced by a stifling, joyless energy. As Lucas stood in his soon-to-be-finished dining room one evening, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. Every setback, every ounce of pain and doubt, had led to this moment. Roots and Wings was more than a restaurant. It was a testament to resilience, creativity, and the unshakable belief in his own worth. And soon, the city would taste that truth in every bite. Since Lucas Simmons's departure, the atmosphere at La Table Royale had changed drastically. The warmth and camaraderie that once defined the kitchen had been replaced by a tense, oppressive environment. Staff members moved in silence, afraid to speak up or suggest new ideas for fear of Mr. Gaines's wrath. This negative energy seeped into the dining room, where customers could feel the discord. The attentive service that had been a hallmark of the restaurant now felt lackluster, and the overall dining experience suffered. As weeks passed, the financial strain on La Table Royale became impossible to ignore. Mr. Gaines sat in his office, staring at spreadsheets filled with red numbers, his hands trembling as he realized the gravity of the situation. "We can't go on like this," he admitted to himself, the weight of his past actions sinking in. Regular patrons who had dined at the restaurant for years began seeking new experiences elsewhere. Food critics, once lavish in their praise for La Table Royale, now published scathing reviews that further tarnished the restaurant's reputation. Mr. Gaines's pride prevented him from acknowledging the root cause of the decline. He blamed the economy, changing food trends, and even his staff. But deep down, a nagging voice reminded him of the talented chef he had driven away. Meanwhile, excitement buzzed at Roots and Wings. On the night of its grand opening, the restaurant welcomed a full house. Guests streamed through the doors, greeted by a warm, inviting atmosphere. Lucas stood in the kitchen, his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and joy. As the first dishes left the kitchen, the dining room erupted with exclamations of delight. Lucas's innovative fusion of traditional soul food and modern techniques captivated every palate. Angela moved among the tables, beaming with pride. She chatted with guests, her radiant smile reflecting the joy of the evening. Through the kitchen window, she caught Lucas's eye and gave him a thumbs up. Lucas returned the gesture, his heart swelling with gratitude and love. In the kitchen, Lucas worked with a renewed energy, his passion evident in every dish. His team, inspired by his leadership and creativity, moved in perfect harmony. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter and camaraderie, a stark contrast to the tension that now plagued La Table Royale. As the evening progressed, food critics and local celebrities arrived, drawn by the buzz surrounding Lucas's return to the culinary scene. They sampled his signature dishes, their eyes widening with every bite. Conversations about the innovative menu and Lucas's inspiring journey filled the air. Across town, Mr. Gaines sat alone in his office at La Table Royale, scrolling through social media. His face fell as he saw post after post praising Roots and Wings and its talented chef. Photos of smiling patrons and mouth-watering dishes flooded his feed. The realization of what he had lost hit Mr. Gaines like a physical blow. He thought of the empty tables in his restaurant, the dwindling reservations, and the mounting bills. The consequences of his actions were becoming painfully clear. Back at Roots and Wings, Lucas stepped out of the kitchen to address the crowd. The room fell silent as he spoke, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his eyes glistening. "This restaurant is a dream come true, and it wouldn't be possible without your support." The crowd erupted in applause, the energy of the evening palpable. As weeks turned into months, Roots and Wings flourished. It became a culinary hotspot, drawing food lovers from across the city and beyond. Lucas's innovative dishes and warm hospitality kept patrons coming back for more. Meanwhile, La Table Royale became a shadow of its former self. Empty tables and a skeleton staff greeted Mr. Gaines each day. The once bustling kitchen now stood quiet, a stark reminder of his poor decisions. One evening, as Mr. Gaines sat alone in his office, poring over mounting bills and dwindling bank statements, the reality of his situation hit him hard. Tears welled in his eyes as he realized he was on the brink of losing everything. His pride and prejudice had cost him not just his best chef, but his entire business. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm him, there was a knock at the door. Mr. Gaines looked up, hastily wiping his eyes to see Lucas standing in the doorway. Surprise and shame washed over Mr. Gaines's face. "Lucas, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucas stepped into the office, his expression a mix of determination and compassion. "Mr. Gaines, I've heard about the restaurant's struggles," Lucas began. I have a proposition for you." Mr. Gaines's eyebrows raised in disbelief. After everything that had happened, after all the pain he had caused, Lucas was here, offering help. Lucas took a deep breath and continued. "I know we've had our differences, but I believe in second chances. I'm offering to buy La Table Royale and incorporate it into Roots and Wings. You would stay on as a consultant, sharing your expertise and helping to blend the best of both establishments." Mr. Gaines sat in stunned silence, his mind reeling. The offer was unexpected, humbling, and most of all, a lifeline. Lucas Simmons stood calmly before Mr. Gaines, his unexpected kindness leaving the older man speechless. The offer Lucas had made felt like a lifeline Mr. Gaines never thought he'd receive, especially from the very man he had mistreated so deeply. Mr. Gaines stared at Lucas, his eyes wide with disbelief. I don't understand," he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "After everything I did to you, why would you want to help me?" Lucas smiled softly, his eyes filled with compassion. "Because holding on to anger only hurts us both. I've learned that forgiveness is powerful." Stepping closer to Mr. Gaines's desk, Lucas's demeanor remained calm and confident. "La Table Royale has a rich history and so much potential. It would be a shame to see it close its doors forever. I believe we can breathe new life into it, together." Mr. Gaines's shoulders sagged as he let out a heavy sigh. "But how?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The restaurant is failing, it's beyond saving." Lucas shook his head, determination ringing in his tone. "No restaurant is beyond saving if you have the right people and the right vision. I see an opportunity to blend the classic techniques that made La Table Royale famous with the innovative approach we've developed at Roots and Wings." Pausing, he let his words sink in. "I'm offering to buy your share of the restaurant," Lucas continued. "But I want you to stay on as a consultant. Your experience and knowledge are invaluable." Mr. Gaines's eyes widened at the offer. It was more than he had hoped for, more than he deserved. A lump formed in his throat as he struggled to respond. "Lucas, I don't know what to say," he finally managed, his voice barely audible. "Your offer is incredibly generous, especially considering our history." Lucas nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "I know it's a lot to take in. Take some time to think about it, but know that this offer comes from a place of respect for what La Table Royale once was and what it could be again." Mr. Gaines looked down at his hands, then back up at Lucas. In that moment, he didn't just see a talented chef, he saw a man of immense character and grace. Humbled and grateful, he made his decision. I accept your offer, Lucas," Mr. Gaines said, his voice filled with relief and gratitude. "Thank you for giving me, and this restaurant, a second chance." With the sale finalized, Lucas and Mr. Gaines stood in the quiet kitchen of La Table Royale. The once bustling space was a shadow of its former self, but Lucas saw its potential. "Mr. Gaines," Lucas began, his voice steady, "I have a proposition for you." Mr. Gaines looked up, curiosity mingled with apprehension. "Yes?" Lucas smiled. "I'd like to offer you the position of head chef here at La Table Royale." Mr. Gaines's eyes widened in surprise. "Head chef? But I thought, after everything." Lucas raised a hand, gently interrupting. "The past is behind us. What matters now is the future of this restaurant. Your experience and skill are invaluable, and I believe you can play a crucial role in its revival." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But I want to be clear about something. This restaurant will be run differently from now on. Our focus will be on inclusivity, respect, and creating a healthy work environment for everyone." Mr. Gaines nodded slowly, absorbing Lucas's words. "That means no room for bias or prejudice," Lucas continued. "Every member of our team, regardless of their background, will be valued and given equal opportunities to shine. Can you commit to that?" Mr. Gaines stared at the gleaming countertops, reflecting on his past mistakes. When he looked up, tears shimmered in his eyes. "Lucas, I don't deserve this kindness, but if you're willing to give me this chance, I promise to do everything in my power to make things right." Lucas extended his hand. "Then welcome aboard, Chef Gaines. Let's create something amazing together. As the days passed, Mr. Gaines grappled with his new role. The idea of working under Lucas, the man he had once treated so poorly, filled him with a mix of shame and unease. But as he observed Lucas in action, his perspective began to shift. One busy evening, the kitchen was alive with activity. Lucas's calm demeanor and encouraging words brought out the best in the staff, a stark contrast to Mr. Gaines's old authoritarian style. "Chef Gaines," Lucas called, his voice cutting through the hum of the kitchen. "Could you help Samantha with the sauce for table 5? She's having a bit of trouble getting it right." Mr. Gaines hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He walked over to Samantha's station and guided her through the process, surprised to find himself enjoying the interaction. Samantha's eyes lit up with understanding, her gratitude evident. For the first time in years, Mr. Gaines felt a flicker of something he had long forgotten, a sense of fulfillment in mentoring others. The tension in his chest began to ease as he realized that this new chapter was an opportunity not just for the restaurant's revival, but for his own redemption. Gratitude was evident in Samantha's warm smile. "Thank you, Chef," she said sincerely. "I really appreciate your help." As Mr. Gaines nodded, he felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in the kitchen for a long time. He glanced over at Lucas, who gave him an approving nod. For the first time in years, Mr. Gaines felt a sense of pride that went beyond just food. It was about mentorship and teamwork. As the weeks passed, Mr. Gaines began noticing changes in himself. He found himself looking forward to work, eager to collaborate with the diverse team Lucas had assembled. The kitchen, once stifling and tense, was now filled with laughter and camaraderie. One day, while planning the menu for an upcoming event, Lucas turned to Mr. Gaines. "What do you think about incorporating some fusion dishes?" he asked. "We could blend traditional French techniques with flavors from different cuisines." In the past, Mr. Gaines would have scoffed at such an idea, but now he found himself intrigued. "That sounds interesting," he replied, surprising himself. "Perhaps we could try a twist on coq au vin with some Asian spices." Lucas beamed, and Mr. Gaines felt a spark of pride he hadn't experienced in years. Under Lucas's leadership, he was rediscovering his passion for cooking and learning to see value in new perspectives. As they worked together to create the new menu, Mr. Gaines embraced the restaurant's evolving ethos. He began to see the strength in diversity, the beauty in collaboration, and the joy in nurturing young talent. One sunny afternoon, Lucas and Mr. Gaines sat at a corner table surrounded by papers and menu drafts. "What if we add a section for seasonal specials?" Lucas suggested, a sparkle in his eyes. "We could showcase local ingredients and keep things fresh." "That's an excellent idea," Mr. Gaines said, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "We could rotate the dishes every month and give our regulars something new to look forward to." As they discussed the menu changes, Lucas noticed a newfound enthusiasm in Mr. Gaines's demeanor. The older chef's face had softened, and his voice carried an eagerness that had once been absent. The staff noticed the changes too. The kitchen, once a place of tension and fear, now buzzed with positive energy. Chefs from diverse backgrounds contributed their unique perspectives, creating a fusion of flavors that set La Table Royale apart from other restaurants in the city. One evening, as the dinner service wound down, Lucas gathered the staff for a meeting. "I want to thank all of you for your hard work," he said warmly. "We've come a long way, and it's because of your dedication and creativity." To everyone's surprise, Mr. Gaines stepped forward, clearing his throat. I'd like to say something too," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I know I wasn't the easiest person to work with in the past, but thanks to Lucas's leadership and your patience, I've learned so much. Thank you for giving me a second chance." For a moment the room was silent, then it erupted into applause. Lucas watched as Mr. Gaines's face reddened, a small smile tugging at his lips. Word of the changes at La Table Royale began to spread. Curious diners returned, drawn by tales of the restaurant's revitalization. They were greeted by a warm, inviting atmosphere and a menu that delighted and surprised them. La Table Royale began to regain its former reputation, not just for its food, but for its inclusive and innovative approach to fine dining. The transformation was evident even in small moments. One busy lunch service, Aisha, a young sous chef, accidentally dropped a tray of appetizers. She froze, bracing for Mr. Gaines's usual sharp reprimand. Instead, he approached her calmly. "It's all right, Aisha. These things happen," he said gently. "Let's clean this up together and start fresh." The kitchen fell silent, stunned by Mr. Gaines's unexpected kindness. Aisha's eyes welled with tears of gratitude as she and Mr. Gaines worked side by side to clean the mess. As Mr. Gaines's transformation continued, the staff felt more at ease in his presence. They began sharing ideas more freely, knowing their input would be valued rather than dismissed. The kitchen atmosphere shifted from competitive to collaborative, and the team flourished as a result. During a staff meeting one evening, Mr. Gaines surprised everyone by asking for feedback on his management style. "I know I haven't always been the easiest person to work with," he admitted, his voice tinged with humility. "But I'd like to improve. Your thoughts and suggestions are important to me." The staff exchanged glances, then began sharing their ideas. For the first time, they felt truly heard. Under Lucas's guidance, La Table Royale blossomed into a beacon of excellence and inclusivity, and as Mr. Gaines grew into his new role, he not only redeemed himself in the eyes of his team, but also rediscovered his own love for the art of cooking and leadership. The kitchen became more than a workplace, it became a family. Together they forged a legacy of growth, proving that even the deepest wounds could heal with humility, forgiveness, and the courage to change. As Mr. Gaines stood before the staff during a meeting, his voice carried a mixture of regret and determination. "I know I haven't always been the easiest person to work with," he admitted, his tone humble. "But I'm committed to doing better. Please, tell me how I can improve." At first, the room was silent. Slowly, one by one, the staff began to open up. They shared their experiences and offered suggestions, and to everyone's surprise, Mr. Gaines listened intently. He took notes, asked thoughtful questions, and genuinely considered their feedback. As Mr. Gaines's old discriminatory attitudes faded, the diversity in the kitchen flourished. Chefs from different backgrounds felt empowered to bring their unique culinary perspectives to the table. The menu evolved into a vibrant fusion of flavors and techniques, reflecting the rich tapestry of the staff's experiences. The transformation extended beyond the kitchen. The once stifling environment now echoed with laughter and camaraderie. Staff began socializing outside of work, organizing potluck dinners, where each member brought a dish that represented their heritage. These gatherings fostered deeper understanding and appreciation for one another's cultures, further strengthening the bonds within the team. One evening, as the last of the staff left after another successful day, Lucas and Mr. Gaines sat in the quiet office of La Table Royale. The golden hues of the setting sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the room. Lucas leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, Mr. Gaines, I never imagined we'd be sitting here like this," he said softly, his voice reflective. Mr. Gaines nodded, a hint of a smile breaking through his usually stern demeanor. "Neither did I, Lucas. I've learned more in these past few months than in my entire career." Lucas studied the older man, noting the profound changes in him. The cold, dismissive attitude that had once defined Mr. Gaines was gone, replaced by someone who seemed more at peace with himself and the world. "I've seen such growth in you," Lucas said, his tone warm and encouraging. "The way you've embraced change, how you've started really listening to the staff, it's been incredible to watch." Mr. Gaines's eyes met Lucas's, filled with a mix of gratitude and regret. "I owe you an apology, Lucas. The way I treated you before, it was unacceptable. I was blinded by my own prejudices and fears." Lucas nodded, acknowledging the apology. "We all make mistakes, Mr. Gaines. What matters is how we learn from them. I believe in second chances, and you've proven yourself worthy of one." A comfortable silence settled between them, both reflecting on their journey. Mr. Gaines broke the quiet first, his voice thick with emotion. "Your generosity in offering me this position, it's taught me so much about leadership and humility." Lucas smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's what partnerships are about, aren't they? Learning from each other, growing together. We may have started as adversaries, but I think we found something much more valuable." Mr. Gaines nodded. "Indeed. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm proud to work alongside you, Lucas. Your vision for this restaurant, your commitment to inclusivity and respect, it's inspiring." As the weeks passed, La Table Royale underwent a transformation under the joint leadership of Lucas and Mr. Gaines. The restaurant, once known for its rigid atmosphere and outdated menu, now radiated a fresh energy that patrons couldn't help but notice. Curious diners who had stayed away during Mr. Gaines's tenure began trickling back, drawn by whispers of innovative dishes and a welcoming atmosphere. They were greeted by a menu that artfully blended classic French cuisine with modern twists inspired by Lucas's heritage. Dishes like coq au vin with African spices and ratatouille fusion became instant favorites, showcasing the unique partnership between Lucas and Mr. Gaines. It wasn't just the food that brought people back. The staff, once tense and fearful, now worked with joy and purpose. Servers greeted guests with genuine smiles, and the kitchen buzzed with positive energy. Patrons could feel the difference as soon as they stepped through the door. Regulars like Mrs. Thompson, who had been dining at La Table Royale for years, couldn't stop raving about the changes. "It's like a breath of fresh air," she told her friends over lunch one day. "The food is better than ever, and everyone seems so happy to be here." As news of the restaurant's revival spread, it began to attract attention from food critics and local media. A glowing review in the city's top newspaper praised not only the exceptional cuisine, but also the inspiring story of redemption and unity behind the restaurant's transformation. Soon, La Table Royale became more than just a place to eat. It became a symbol of what was possible when people put aside their differences and worked together. The community embraced the restaurant's new chapter, finding hope and inspiration in its story. And for Lucas and Mr. Gaines, it was a testament to the power of humility, forgiveness, and the courage to build something extraordinary. Together, leaders in the culinary world began pointing to Lucas Simmons and Mr. Gaines's partnership as a shining example of positive change. Under their joint leadership, La Table Royale not only thrived but became a symbol of what could be achieved when individuals embraced second chances and diversity. The restaurant hosted events celebrating inclusivity in the culinary arts, drawing chefs and patrons from all walks of life. For Lucas and Mr. Gaines, seeing their vision come to life was profoundly rewarding. They often stood side by side in the kitchen, working in perfect harmony to craft dishes that delighted their guests. Their mutual respect set the tone for the entire team, creating a culture of collaboration and creativity. Lucas's journey from a wrongfully dismissed chef to a successful restaurateur began to resonate far beyond the city. His story of resilience, forgiveness, and triumph over adversity captured the hearts of people from all over. Word spread quickly, and soon local news outlets were covering the inspiring transformation of La Table Royale. One sunny morning, Lucas received a call from a popular morning show, inviting him to share his story in a segment about local success stories. At first, Lucas was nervous about appearing on television, but Sophia encouraged him to share his journey. "Your story can inspire so many people," she reminded him with a smile. On the day of the interview, Lucas found himself sitting under bright studio lights. As the cameras rolled, he spoke from the heart about his experiences, the pain of discrimination, the struggle to find work, and the unexpected opportunities that had changed his life. But most importantly, Lucas said, his voice filled with emotion, "I learned the power of forgiveness and second chances. I could have held on to anger, but instead, I chose to move forward. That decision opened doors I never imagined possible." The segment aired, and the response was overwhelming. Messages of support and admiration poured in from across the country. People shared how Lucas's story had touched their lives, inspiring them to persevere through their own challenges. Before long, invitations began flooding in. Local business associations asked Lucas to speak at their events. Culinary schools wanted him to address their students. Even national conferences expressed interest in featuring him as a keynote speaker. At first, Lucas felt overwhelmed by the attention. "I'm just a chef who loves to cook," he confided to Sophia. "I'm not a public speaker." "But you're more than that," Sophia said gently. "Your words can change lives, Lucas." As he began accepting these invitations, Lucas realized the impact he could have. At each event, he shared his story with honesty and humility, speaking about perseverance, passion, and the transformative power of forgiveness. His words resonated deeply, often leaving his audiences moved to tears. One evening, as Lucas stood in the bustling kitchen of his flagship restaurant, he took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. The gleaming surfaces and state-of-the-art equipment were a far cry from the small diner where he had once worked to make ends meet. Through the kitchen window, he caught sight of La Table Royale, thriving under his and Mr. Gaines's joint leadership. The restaurant had become a testament to the power of second chances and forgiveness. A gentle touch on his shoulder brought Lucas out of his thoughts. He turned to see Sophia smiling at him. "Lost in thought again?" she teased, her eyes twinkling with understanding. Lucas nodded, pulling her into a warm embrace. "Just thinking about how far we've come," he said softly. "I never could have imagined this when I was fired from La Table Royale." As if on cue, Mr. Gaines entered the kitchen, his chef whites crisp and clean. The two men exchanged a nod of mutual respect, their past conflicts now a distant memory. "We've got a full house tonight," Mr. Gaines announced, a hint of excitement in his voice. "And that food critic from the Times is here again." Lucas smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for the community that had rallied around him during his darkest moments. He thought of the charity cook-off that had reignited his passion, the food critic who had believed in him, and the countless people who had supported his dream. As Lucas prepared for the evening service, he glanced around at the diverse faces of his staff. They were a reflection of the inclusive environment he had worked so hard to create. His restaurants were more than just businesses. They were beacons of hope, showing that kindness and integrity could triumph over prejudice and adversity. With a deep sense of fulfillment, Lucas picked up his chef's knife and began to cook, his heart full of gratitude for the incredible journey that had brought him here. Would you have forgiven Mr. Gaines if you were in Lucas's shoes? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel. I spend hours crafting these heartwarming tales just for you, and your support keeps me going. Music fades out as the screen shows Lucas in his bustling kitchen, a smile on his face, ready to serve his community once again.